Today's subject is a man who became the face of the American frontier, the architect of a cinematic empire built on justice, courage, and solitary resolve, Kevin Costner. He redefined the Western, won Oscars on his own terms, and turned his name into a symbol of American storytelling. This is the story of Kevin Costner and what happened to his 7 children. Annie Costner, legacy through storytelling. She was born in April 1984, just a few months before her father's breakout role in Silverado. At that time, Kevin Costner was still trying to get Hollywood to remember his name. Her mother, Cindy Silva, had just left a job at Disneyland. Her father was still attending auditions, still hungry. But by the time Annie was 5, the world knew who Kevin Costner was. In 1989, Field of Dreams came out, and the media started circling the Costner family a year later. Dances with Wolves made her father a legend. Annie attended her first red carpet when she was 6. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but her parents kept her grounded strict rules, private Catholic school, no interviews, no vanity. In 1994, when Annie was 10, her parents divorced. Kevin Costner's career was still hot, but her childhood changed overnight. Annie and her 2 younger siblings, Lily and Joe, stayed primarily with Cindy. That same year, Kevin starred in Wyatt Earp and the War, while Annie quietly started journaling, unknowingly taking the first steps toward a career in storytelling in high school. She leaned into writing and theater, but not as a means to fame. Her essays focused on global issues, and she became involved in service programs. In 2002, Annie entered Brown University, choosing to study Latin American studies instead of film. While Kevin was filming Open Range, Annie was studying abroad in Costa Rica, learning about development and sustainability. After graduating in 2006, she worked briefly in production roles, but by 2009 she co-founded Sound Off Films, a company rooted in documentary work, environmental justice, and cultural preservation. While her father starred in The Company Men and later launched Yellowstone, Annie stayed in the shadows, producing films like The Discarded and Racing Extinction, quietly building a catalog of impact-driven media. In July 2016, she married Dr. Danny Cox in a private Napa Valley wedding, with Kevin walking her down the aisle not as a celebrity, but as a father trying to give her peace on her own terms. By 2020, Annie was a mother, a producer, and a quiet force behind the camera, continuing to tell stories that intersected people, land, and justice. In 2023, as Yellowstone dominated ratings and Kevin stepped back into directing with Horizon, Annie remained committed to her mission, using storytelling not for stardom, but for substance. Today, Annie Costner lives far from Hollywood in both mindset and location. Lily Costner, silence over spotlight. Lily Costner, born in August 1986, Lily Costner came into the world during her father's rapid climb to fame. Kevin Costner had just wrapped The Untouchables, and his name was starting to mean something in Hollywood. From a young age, Lily displayed a quiet affinity for melody. While Annie journaled and acted out scenes with friends, Lily sang. By age 6. She had memorized the lyrics to her father's favorite folk records. And when Kevin wasn't filming, he was often playing guitar in the living room. In 1994, at just 8 years old, Lily's life shifted with her parents' divorce. The Costner house split in 2, but music became Lily's constant. She joined choir, studied classical voice, and began writing her own songs by the time she was a teenager. Her voice was soft, but haunting, a tone that didn't demand attention, but held it. She studied at Wesleyan University, far from the spotlight, but every so often she appeared beside her father, not as an accessory, but as a collaborator. In 2004, Lily was 18 when Kevin invited her to sing on stage with his band, Modern West. Over the next decade, she would write and sing backup for several of his tracks, but never pushed to be a pop star. Lily's artistry was private, even spiritual. In 2014, she contributed vocals to the soundtrack of Black or White, one of her father's passion projects. The song, Long as I Can See the Light, wasn't just a cover. It was a soft reckoning, she said. Music is how I understand people, not how I promote myself. In 2020, while Kevin prepared Yellowstone for a global audience, Lily was quietly releasing acoustic singles under an alias, performing only in intimate venues around Los Angeles and Montana. Now approaching 40, Lily Costner lives a quiet life surrounded by music, trees, and time. But when she sings, you hear the Costner name in a different key, not loud, not demanding, but full of grace. Joe Costner, built in the background. Joe Costner was born in January 1988, the youngest child of Kevin and Cindy, before their marriage unraveled. At the time, Kevin was finishing Bull Durham and gearing up for Field of Dreams, a stretch of roles that would catapult him into global superstardom. As a toddler, Joe tagged along on film sets, sitting quietly beside his sisters, watching directors yell and cameras roll. By the time he turned 6, Dances with Wolves had won 7 Oscars, and the Costner name was engraved in film history. But in 1994, when Joe was just 6 years old, everything split. His parents divorced, his home life fractured, and for the first time, he had to learn how to belong to two worlds. As he grew up, Joe didn't follow Annie into storytelling or Lily into music. He turned to the mechanics of sound itself. By high school, he was already fascinated by the unseen layers of film microphones, soundscapes, acoustics. He enrolled at Chapman University, not for acting or directing, but for audio engineering. While his classmates chased stardom, Joe sat in control rooms, mixing dialogue and balancing frequencies. In the early 2010s, Joe quietly built a resume as a sound engineer and producer, working on independent films and live sessions in Los Angeles. When asked, he said, "My dad told me to get good before anyone knows who you are." It stuck. In 2016, Joe co-founded Spartan Recording, a mobile studio housed in an Airstream trailer, built to capture live, analog music in remote locations. It was rugged, artistic, and quietly revolutionary, much like his father's earliest roles. Joe's work with Spartan took him across the country, capturing intimate performances in deserts, forests, and dive bars. By 2022, while Kevin was headlining Yellowstone, Joe had produced multiple award-winning audio documentaries and worked with musicians seeking that rare mix of rawness and precision. He still avoids the spotlight. He prefers coffee shops to premieres, long drives to networking events. But among all 7 of Kevin Costner's children, Joe may be the one who understands cinema most deeply, not through fame, but through fidelity. Liam Costner, inheritance without fame. Liam Timothy Costner was born on November 15, 1996, into a world that was already watching. At the time, Kevin Costner was fresh off starring in Tin Cup, still one of Hollywood's most bankable names. But Liam's arrival didn't come with cameras or magazine covers. His mother, Bridget Rooney, came from a powerful family heirs to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and when Liam was born, the relationship between Kevin and Bridget had already ended. A paternity test soon confirmed Kevin as the father, but there was no co-parenting in the traditional sense. Liam was raised primarily by Bridget in Palm Beach, Florida, in a world shaped more by East Coast wealth than by California red carpets. In his early childhood from ages 3 to 10, Liam lived a life of extreme privacy. While his older half-siblings appeared in photo spreads and sometimes on screen, Liam never joined the public orbit of the Costner name. Kevin reportedly supported him financially and emotionally, but maintained a low profile in how he handled fatherhood, arranging visits discreetly, shielding Liam from the Costner spotlight. By the mid-2000s, as Kevin remarried and started a new family with Christine Baumgartner, Liam was entering adolescence and had grown up largely separate from the Hollywood dynamic. He attended elite prep schools in Florida, played sports, and showed early interest not in film or music like his siblings, but in numbers and negotiation. By age 18, around 2014, while Kevin was starring in Draft Day, Liam had graduated high school and turned down any flirtation with the entertainment industry. Instead, he entered college and pursued a path in business. By 21, he'd earned his real estate license and began working quietly in luxury property sales, primarily around northern Palm Beach County. While his father was filming Yellowstone and walking red carpets, Liam was touring penthouses, analyzing square footage, and handling multi-million-dollar clients. By 2020, at just 24, he was handling listings in the $10, $20 million range, often for celebrities, athletes, and CEOs, many of whom never connected him to his Oscar-winning father. In 2022, as Kevin's role in Horizon made headlines again, Liam's name only appeared in business filings and local real estate profiles. That was by design. Now approaching 30, Liam Costner remains the most private of all Kevin's children. No acting resume, no public statements, no legacy branding. Caden Costner raised in the shade. Caden Wyatt Costner was born on May 6, 2007, the first child of Kevin Costner and Christine Baumgartner. Unlike his older half-siblings who came of age during Kevin's stardom peak, Caden was born into a new chapter, a calmer version of fame, where Kevin had already won his Oscars, raised 3 kids, and redefined himself through family. From the beginning, Kevin approached Caden's upbringing with the hard-earned lessons of past mistakes. At just 2 months old, Caden appeared in a rare People magazine photo spread, cradled in his father's arms on a Colorado ranch. But that was one of the only glimpses the public got. Kevin and Christine chose a quieter path rooted in privacy, ranch life, and structure. From age 3, Caden was raised between the family's home in Aspen and their compound in Santa Barbara. By age 6, Caden was attending private school while his father launched the TV series Yellowstone, which would soon become a cultural juggernaut. Caden's childhood was filled with contrasts, a dad known to millions, yet always at home in time for dinner. In 2015, when Caden was 8, Kevin took him along to set in Utah, where Yellowstone was filming early concept material. While other celebrity children were being groomed for stardom, Caden was being taught humility. He reportedly asked once, "Do I have to be an actor too?" And Kevin answered, "Only if it makes you happy." As Caden entered middle school, he showed a growing interest in sports, especially baseball and lacrosse, and often traveled with his father for weekend games. By 2020, at age 13, Caden had become more visible at public events, occasionally walking red carpets for Yellowstone premieres, but never speaking on camera. He remained composed, quiet, respectful. In 2023, Caden appeared with his father and siblings at the Golden Globes, towering in height and bearing the signature Costner jawline, sparking media speculation about his future. But Kevin shut it down quickly, saying, "He's just being a teenager. He's not here to perform." In May 2024, Caden graduated from junior high, and despite Kevin's very public divorce from Christine that year, both parents appeared side by side at the ceremony, silent, dignified, and united for their son. Now 17, Caden is finishing high school and preparing for college. He remains outside the industry, focusing on academics and sports. If Kevin Costner's first children grew up in the heat of the spotlight, Caden is growing up in its shade and choosing, for now, to stay there. Heirs Costner, born into the script. Heirs Logan Costner was born on February 12, 2009, 2 years after his older brother Caden, and just months before Kevin Costner turned 55. At the time, Kevin was shifting his focus from blockbuster stardom to family legacy, building a quiet life on his Colorado ranch, and choosing roles that kept him closer to home. From the start, Heirs brought a different energy. Where Caden was measured and athletic, Heirs was curious, restless, and imaginative. By age 4, Heirs was already dressing up as cowboys and soldiers, mimicking dialogue, and building elaborate stories out of toys and mud. His mother, Christine, described him as our little director, while Kevin called him the one I keep an eye on because that kid's going to surprise me. In 2014, at just 5 years old, Heirs visited the set of Black or White, a film his father produced and starred in. Though far too young to understand the story, Heirs reportedly kept asking why the cameras stopped between scenes. The curiosity never faded. By 2017, while Kevin was wrapping the first season of Yellowstone, Heirs was 9 and already helping the ranch crew in Colorado, stacking firewood, riding horses, and asking to do stunts like his dad. But Kevin and Christine didn't push him into acting. Instead, they nurtured his imagination through reading, nature, and music. In interviews during that period, Kevin often named Heirs as the wild card of the family, the one who could either become a writer, an actor, or something totally unexpected. Then in a twist no one saw coming, Heirs' name reappeared in headlines, not for what he did, but for what Kevin did with it. In 2023, Kevin revealed that he had named one of the central characters in his film Saga, Horizon, an American saga after Heirs. I wanted him to know that something I built was built with him in mind. Kevin said Heirs is in the bones of that story. That revelation stirred speculation about whether Heirs would follow his father into film, but Kevin shut it down gently. He doesn't need to act to be in the story, he already is. In 2024, as Kevin went through a public divorce with Christine, Heirs, then 15, stayed largely out of sight. Now 16, Heirs Logan Costner stands at the edge of adulthood with a name that already lives in cinema, even if his face has never graced the screen. Among Kevin's 7 children, he may be the one most aligned with his father's creative instincts. Grace Costner, the family's quiet strength. Grace Avery. Costner was born on June 2, 2010, the youngest of Kevin Costner's 7 children and the only daughter from his marriage to Christine Baumgartner. Her arrival came when Kevin was 55, well past the Hollywood phase of chasing headlines, and deep into a life shaped by experience, intention, and a second chance at fatherhood. Grace entered a home already busy with 2 older brothers, Caden and Hayes, and yet from the beginning, she brought a different rhythm. Kevin often described her as the balance, the calm presence who softened the energy of the household. By age 3, Grace was already fluent in the quiet language of ranch life, bottle feeding calves, helping her mother in the garden, and riding horses on the family's 160-acre Aspen property. Her earliest years coincided with Kevin's retreat from Hollywood Center during the making of Hatfields and McCoys and the beginning of Yellowstone, projects that kept her father rooted in stories of land and legacy. When Grace turned 5 in 2015, Kevin was spending more time at home than he had with his first 3 children. She attended private school in Santa Barbara, kept a low profile, and rarely appeared in public. The few times she joined her father on red carpets at age 8 for a family photo during the Yellowstone press tour, or age 10 during a rare appearance at a Golden Globes event, she stood quietly, politely, never seeking the camera. But behind the scenes, Grace developed a quiet confidence. She played piano, loved ballet, and by middle school had a strong interest in wildlife conservation. She reportedly wrote an essay at age 12 about protecting coastal birds, which was read aloud at a school function where Kevin sat in the back, teary-eyed. In 2023, during Kevin and Christine's very public divorce, Grace was 13, old enough to understand the gravity, but young enough to be protected from its worst. Kevin said very little publicly about how the divorce affected his youngest daughter, but he did attend her dance recital just days after a contentious court hearing, quietly cheering with Christine seated 3 rows away. As of 2024, Grace is 14, beginning high school, and still shielded from the Hollywood orbit that defines so much of her family, while her older siblings built careers in film, sound, and real estate. Grace is still forming the questions, still learning what parts of her last name she wants to carry forward. 7 children, each with the same last name, and 7 different lives. One became a storyteller. One chose silence. One built in the background. One walked away from fame. One stayed grounded in legacy. One was written into his father's script. And one, the youngest, held the family center with quiet strength. They didn't inherit Hollywood. They inherited the weight of a man who built his myth in front of the world, and then tried to be a father behind the scenes. If you found this breakdown powerful and want more deep dives into the hidden lives of Hollywood's forgotten children, subscribe to Hidden Heirs. Your support brings these invisible stories to light. Thanks for listening.